Hi, everybody. This is Loren Baker, founder of Search Engine Journal. Today, I have with me Jesse McDonald of Top Hat Rank. Say hi real quick, Jesse.
Hey, Loren, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Very good, very good.
So Jesse is coming in from Austin, Texas, and he recently started. He recently started writing and contributing to Search Engine Journal, to SEJ. So his second post kind of took off, and I think it's really timely in terms of the content that he was talking about and the subject matter. It's basically how to build authority in local SEO. There's a lot going on right now and a lot of questions about not just local SEO, but how Google My Business is going to shape your local presence within Google and within SERPs moving forward. So I really wanted to have Jesse on as a guest today at SEJ Live to talk a little bit about his post and also answer any questions which may come in. So Jesse, please feel free to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm the director of operations at Top Hat Rank. We're a boutique digital marketing agency out of LA, but I'm located out of Austin, where I've lived for about 6 years now. And I've been in the SEO world for about 5 of those 6 years, and really cut my teeth on local search. So basically, the more or less 4.5 of the 5 years I've been in SEO, I have been very much focused on local up until probably the last 6 months to a year. So one of the things that I've always done in local search has been very much focused on the authority building side of things and being very much user first as a quality metric. So once, EAT started becoming a real big conversation to the global SEO community, I thought it was really interesting that this is something that I've been thinking about for years, and not necessarily trying to toot my own horn, but definitely having that focus on building authority and building your expertise within the local space has proven to be extremely valuable. And this is something I've been talking to Greg Gifford and Damon Gochner about for years. So it's been really interesting watching the entire community kind of start to embrace it a little bit more and talking about it a little bit more, because it's been a huge factor in local search for years. So talk to your local guys. We know what's going on. We actually might have the up and up on things.
So just to recap, EAT is a backronym that stands for expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, correct?
Yes, correct.
And those are all different signals that you can establish. I think in local, you have the ability to establish it a little bit easier than you do on a global scale, because within local, you really, it's a Wild West. It's a Wild West right now in terms of like GMB and some of the stuff that's going on there. But on the flip side, you have the ability to verify yourself, even if it's via a very outdated form of sending a postcard in the mail, right? So you can verify yourself, verify your address. A lot of people and a lot of businesses naturally market locally, right? So it's not like it's taking a very large jump. If you can take the content that you would typically share maybe in a local magazine or a local newspaper, or even just during a ribbon cutting ceremony or something like that, you can also share that online. So what are some other ways that that local businesses can build Google Eats or Google Authority in their market?
So one of the biggest things that you can do for a local business, and this is something I like to do from the very beginning, is using that GMB that you build and verify, making sure that it is completely filled out as much as you can, having the correct name, address, phone number, or NAP as you'll hear it referred to, making sure that's consistent with how you have it on your site, and then filling out photos of your business, the categories that you should be searched in, and then turning that information and start building out your citations based off of that, because that ends up being a very important foundational element of the link building process. And by building up your citations and adding authority to your business information, you have a better shot at ranking for local based search terms in the maps, things like that. So that's a good way to start that foundation. Then once you kind of have everything moving, then start moving outwardly to your link building side of things. So you're building authority with your citations through your name, address, phone number. Then you move into link building, which that's where the different mindset starts to kind of come in. You hear a lot of people talking about metrics like domain authority when looking at a link. And while that's an okay quality metric, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not the quality metric. I'm a big fan, especially in local, of looking at the user impact that the link is going to have. So let's say that you're in a situation where you find a sponsorship for a Little League baseball team. This is kind of one of my favorite hypothetical examples. By the way. Yeah. So you find this Little League team. They are offering a sponsorship. They're going to put your business logo and information on pamphlets or banners. When the team is playing, you might even end up having your logo on a jersey, but you'll also be on the sponsorship page with a link back to your site. So while you are getting that link and it has that local based authority because it's something hyper local, you're also getting that secondary metric of your information is going to be out in front of the people who would use your product or services. So you kind of have to think of it from the perspective of a traditional, almost guerrilla marketing sort of way, where you are looking at getting yourself in front of people and the link almost becomes secondary. But at the end of the day, while that site would probably be a lower DA, you're going to have a greater impact because you're putting yourself into that local market to the moms and dads that are probably going to look for a service like you in the future. So it's almost like a top of the funnel awareness sort of situation.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And it also can boost branded queries, right? Can boost branded. So like one thing, whether you're like a franchisee or a small business, like usually franchisees have the opportunity to do things like send out direct mail, send out postcards, do little door hangers, things like that. And you might think, well, how does that really affect online? Well, when I come home and I get all mad because there's a door hanger there, and then I look and it's actually something very useful, first thing I'm gonna do is either go to the website or search for the brand name. And if you have your local presence established, the brand name is going to serve your GMB first, right? Which has a very controllable, that's the beauty I like. That's the one thing I do like about GMB a lot, is that if you are a small business, you have the ability to control the first impression a lot easier than you would, say, if you're hiring a web development firm or something like that, because you can give a very honest impression via your posts, via your photo uploads, via all the different opportunities that Google My Business gives you. And it's funny you bring up the Little League baseball sponsorship, because we actually did we researched about 250 to 300 Little League soccer teams around the U.S. that accept sponsorships, on-site sponsorships and things like that. And it's kind of funny because we were getting like requests afterwards for like plaques of the team sent to the house and things like that. That's and actually, awesome. Speaking of Damon, one of my clients, I just sponsored his minor league soccer team with one of my clients. And
nice.
It's really interesting because it's great to have that link, but also they're gonna have banners at the game, they're gonna have a tent at the game, they're gonna have a game named after them, right? So if there's 1,000 people there in the audience, they're all going to be introduced to that brand, and at the end of the day, that gives search a much more integrated omni-channel approach from an ROI perspective too, because I paid you to do this, well, we did this, and in addition to what you wanted to help with SEO, you also get all of this other benefits. It's going to help your business grow long term, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
And those type of links end up being pretty affordable too. Those sponsorship packages. So I mean, they end up being a win-win if you can.
Yeah. Oh, just to be sure, sometimes we're paying for the sponsorship package.
You're paying for the sponsorship.
The link kind of comes on a little bit that's like extra. That's like on top.
As soon as I said it, I was like, no. Yeah, you're paying for the sponsorship.
Okay, so links are great. Having your GMB set up is great, but the first thing you really talk about in your posts on SEJ is creating genuinely helpful local content. Can
Mhm.
you go over that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing that I always like to do when working with a local client, and this is kind of true with any type of client whatsoever, is making sure that the content you are putting out there is genuinely helpful. There's no need to add a bunch of fluff. It kind of gets difficult because sometimes people will say like, "Oh, you need to do like, 3 articles a week," but that ends up just being filler. There's no reason to necessarily do that. That's not going to make an impact. But if you take the time to genuinely research something that is going to help your audience, you're going to have a greater impact in search and with their experience for you. Even if they don't become a customer right away, you're hitting them at the beginning of the funnel. You're making them aware. You're helping their consideration phase before they're making a purchase. So I believe the example I used in the article was something like if you're a foundation repair company, when let's say that you are located in Central Texas, doing a post about how to protect your basement from your foundation shifting doesn't make sense. You're not going to have a basement in Texas. But talking about the soil types of Texas and how those can impact your foundation and things to do to prevent that damage helps your client out. Then, if they run into a situation where they have seen damage and need you to come out, they're going to think of you because you genuinely helped them in the past.
Absolutely, and the good thing too is that like that that hyper targeted localized content that brings up subject matter that's really relevant to people in that area benefits you even outside of search, right?
Mhm.
Because like for example, a lot of local businesses, they may even have some sort of lead funnel software where once they get a lead come in, they're following up with maybe some tips, or those tips can be integrated into their MailChimp or iContact list or something like that to not only nurture local clients, but to also help with overall client retention, keep yourself in front of them. A lot of local businesses are very seasonal as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So what can you do throughout the course of the season? Say, for example, if you're a tree trimming company. Well, actually, okay, I used to work with a company that sold I worked with all different kinds of companies, and I got a
Yeah.
story. Tio Lorenzo has a story about all of these. So I used to work with a gutter guard company, right?
Mhm.
So they're busy times, and they would send people around right before the holidays because
Mhm.
that's when people would crawl up on their roofs and hang Christmas lights and look in their gutters, right? So
Interesting.
that was one of the only times of the year there was awareness. First of all, and we would do content around like the buildup you can get from leaves and how that can damage your gutters, how flammable it is when it dries, and then
Mhm.
also how dangerous it is because when you go up to your roof to clean your gutters, a lot of people would fall off. So we'd like publish all of that
Yeah.
data and things like that. But the really interesting thing was when it wasn't the high season, what they would do is they would identify homes that had pools,
Mhm.
and they would go around to the homes with pools and give them free pool nets,
Mhm.
um, because that's the time of the year that people are thinking about leaves, or they're not thinking about leaves in the summer. You're thinking about leaves like in the fall and the winter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But if someone is out there cleaning their pool with a pool net or something that's branded from your gutter company, then you're going
Mhm.
to be thinking about that. You're going to be associating the gutter company with leaves. So point
Yeah.
being is that you can also use that same strategy throughout the course of the year to
Mhm.
hit up people, build trust, utilize that content not only on your site, but with an email, social media, your Facebook presence, everything else across the board. One question I do have this is not a sponsored message, but I have a nice Bing wine tumbler that I'm drinking my morning tea out of, and it reminded me. Um, do you do much on the Bing side with local clients? We've discussed Google My Business, but what about in the Bing side of things?
For me, in the past, Bing has not necessarily been something that I've needed to actively work on.
Mhm.
Uh, Staying in those best practices within Google has always, kind of shown Bing to work out really well. And
Right.
then just naturally the clients that I've worked with in the past that are very local weren't getting a lot of traffic from Bing. So it wasn't really worth the time to put in a lot of effort into it. But that being said, as you're building those citations across the web, it has that impact. So it's one of those you kind of have to go where it makes the most sense to spend your time. I'm just now starting to see Bing really starting to pick up. So that's something that I'm looking into, is the best ways to integrate Bing more into my strategies.
Speaking of Bing, what about other companies that have funny names like Yelp, Yext, all the other I mean, Yext is not really a site for finding things. It's more so for managing your feeds that you're managing all your local presence. But what about Yelp? Is Yelp a big player that you look into quite a bit?
I have a very love-hate relationship with Yelp. I think most people would agree that Yelp is important, but the way they operate is really difficult. I've had clients who have had, dozens of really good reviews being hidden after people started calling them about paying for their listings and things like that. And once they said no, then all of a sudden things started going away. So not to be a Yelp conspiracy theorist, but it's one of those really difficult things to work on. But reviews in general are insanely important to the overall authority of local.
It's a nice bridge there.
Yeah.
Okay, so how are reviews insanely important to the authority of local? Let's dive into that. It's a big deal.
So I would say they've been important for a while, but definitely over the past couple of years, they've gained even more importance. Think about it this way. When you are looking for a restaurant or even a local service, the first thing you do is look at the reviews. What are other people saying about them? Yeah, and that can make a huge impact on your purchase decision. The example I always like to use, there's a tattoo shop in town. And when I was looking to get my mandala on my forearm, I started reviewing the tattoo shops that were around to figure out the best artists that I wanted to look into. So I would go to Instagram, see what their stuff was, and then I would immediately hop over to Google and Yelp and look at what people were saying about their work. And the guy I ended up going with, he had a couple of negative reviews. So obviously that ended up being kind of a maybe don't go this direction. But then I looked at how he responded and found that he was saying, I apologize that things didn't come out the right way. I will say I warned you about a couple of these things, this not being a good idea. And you wanted to go with it anyway. So, whatever. But feel free to come in and we can look at how we can make this right. We can see what we can do to make this better for you. And that really struck a chord with me. I liked that he didn't just ignore it. He said, this was the problem. This is my perspective on the problem, but I want to help you make it right. And that can be really impactful. So I would say while generating reviews are good and you want to make sure that you are suggesting that to your customers, we're here, we're on Yelp, we're on, Google My Business. Feel free to let us know how what your experience was like so we can know. So you can let other people know if it was good, and if it was bad, we can make ourselves better because that's what we want to do. And then responding. That is hugely important. Don't just let it hang because you got a 3-star review and you don't know what to do with it. Don't get angry. Respond. Genuinely respond and try and make things better for the person who left the review.
I like that, and I like your points because I do the same thing. I really think, there's some studies out there, and I'm sure there'll be a study to back up what I'm going to say. But I think the majority of people seem to trust reviews. That's really the future, not only of organic but also advertising. We see companies like Yotpo getting heavy into that, like the crowdsourcing of not only reviews but then pulling in people's experiences all over the web, Instagram video, Instagram shots, all of that. That's the conversion at the end of the day. And what makes it even more powerful is that by giving the verified shop owner the ability to respond, that helps from a conversion perspective, right?
Exactly.
Because if I'm looking at just like review by all of these strangers, then I actually see that the shop person is doing what you just said, responding, helping to negative, and responding to positive reviews too, right? Like I even like that more, because then it shows me that they're not just being defensive, that they're actually working on getting repeat business and sharing that accordingly. Another thing that this is kind of going a little bit off tangent, but the local Facebook pages I belong to, whether they're foodie pages or all kinds of hobby pages, local tattoo pages, et cetera, like I really trust the opinions of a lot of folks in the comments there as well, right? So when I see those same people that I'm getting pinged on every day when I open Facebook, also leaving comments either on the company's Facebook profile, leaving reviews, or if I recognize their name on Yelp or whatever it is, that even helps on that front too. So I think that's really important both ways, not only businesses getting people involved with leaving reviews, positive and negative, but vice versa. Businesses also participating not only on their own reviews, but the community as a whole. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see in terms of local SEO?
From a foundational perspective, kind of like what we talked about, it's not having the GMB done correctly, not just citations being all over the place. That's
right.
I've always found that to be the best place to start. So anytime I'm doing an audit of a local business, I'll take a look at the technical foundation of the website and immediately look into how the GMB is working, what we can improve on, and how the citations are being built off of that. And using a platform like Yext to then push that information out and help with the suppression of duplicate listings and making sure that the aggregators have the correct information and are pushing it out correctly. And one thing that I actually really like about their platform is that it connects through a Google API. So it ends up locking the actual GMB listing. Because in the past, I've had competitors constantly shut down and change information on a GMB. So I was spending hours on the phone with GMB support to try and get things changed. With that connection, I have complete control over it in the back end of Yext, and that information cannot be changed. So it becomes really valuable in that regard. So that's kind of what I've been using. Moz Local is also a good option, but it's a little more limited. But like I said, getting those citations out consistently is a huge foundational step to improving a local search campaign. And then because a lot of these business owners they typically are more like small, so the website's more of an afterthought. It's just something they knew they needed to have, so they built it on the weekend. There are a lot of technical issues too. So while you don't necessarily hear a lot of people talking about the technical side of local SEO, it's something that shouldn't be ignored. I always go in, and first thing that we do as an agency is make sure that the technical foundation of the site is correct. Because then you've built your foundation to build off of, and then you can start having fun making new content, getting out there with more creative link building strategies, and that creates a more successful campaign overall.
Yeah, I really like that approach. And I was talking to Action Sean Jackson, formerly of Copyblogger. I'm not sure what he's doing right now. I know he has a Kickstarter for a notebook project. If you're watching, Sean, or if you tune in later, hi. But he was giving me a stat last time I saw him at PubCon that I think 2016 was the first year that there was actually a decline in websites built.
Really?
Yeah. 2016 or 2017, it had basically because of all of the options for local businesses to take their entire presence to Google, to Facebook, to everywhere else, right? Upload menus to Google, Facebook, like really live there. But the thing is, every time there's a Facebook outage or every time there's a massive Google issue, it's a nice reminder that at the end of the day, you really have to have your owned and centralized hub, because things change and things can happen outside of your control. Sure, servers go down sometimes. Sure, your site might lose some ranking, might gain it afterwards. but having that, symbiotic relationship, right, where your local presence is all funneled back to the site. Therefore, 5-6 years, maybe Facebook isn't not as much of a major player as it is now, right? So the fact, and maybe something new comes up, the fact that you have that centralized authority being sent to that site at the end of the day through all these other front-facing digital platforms means that if anything changes on that front, you're always able to move forward and to move on, because there's always going to be avenues to market locally in that respect.
I've always been a fan of don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Diversify.
Jesse, was there any other tips that you want to give our SEJ audience before we sign off at the end of this live today?
I would just say, make sure your technical's there, make sure your citations are consistent, and start thinking about how to best build authority in a creative way for the sites that you're working on. Even if they're not local, while you're correct, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for a larger, more enterprise, national, international site. It's still important. So take a look at how the local people are doing it and scale it up from there. Cool.
And before we sign off, I wanted to, how's the Saints schedule look like for this upcoming season? I see you have your hat on. You're repping the Who Dat.
I looked at it a little bit last night. I'm feeling pretty good about it, but at the same time, I felt pretty good about it last year too. So we'll see.
It's a tough division, except for the Falcons.
It's super tough.
All right, great. Well, thanks a lot, Jesse. Again, it's Jesse McDonald of Top Hat Rank, correct?
Nailed it. Yeah. Top Hat Rank.
Top Hat Rank, an SEO agency based in LA. Jesse's in Austin. Anything you want to say before you sign off?
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure, and I can't wait to put my next article up next month, I think. Nope, June.
Awesome. So, by the way, I just want to let everyone know, starting to do some SEJ lives. It's going to be once a week. What I'm doing is inviting contributors and guest columnists that have had articles that really stuck out the week before to come on, talk a little bit about their article, talk a little bit about extra subject matter that supports the article, and really answer any questions that you may have. Additionally, Jesse, I noticed there are a couple of questions that popped up here in the feed about content. If you wouldn't mind jumping on later and answering some of those, that'd be fantastic. We might get somebody later after more and more people see this live broadcast. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Everybody have a great Thursday, great Easter weekend. See you next week. I think this is going to be an ongoing thing.